Hello, everyone. My name is Oleg. I'm one of the founders of Texture. And today I'm going to be speaking about the history of Japanese animation in the 1980s and how it revolutionized the world of arts and visual design globally. Sadly, that's not going to happen. Instead, however, I'm going to be talking about the state of Solana lending markets, which is a subject equally as exciting, of course. So, what is Texture? Texture is the new Solana lending protocol that we have been building for the last year to address the complexity and the evolution of the DeFi money markets. When we talk about lending markets right now, overall in DeFi and Solana let alone, of course, we at Team Texture believe that we're standing at a very important junction of DeFi, primarily because there's all sorts of new assets that are being built and that are being launched on-chain, primarily on Solana, because as we all know, Solana is the most innovative and fastest and cheapest chain to launch new assets. And sadly, the existing infrastructure of the money markets and the architecture of the existing lending protocols do not allow for these assets to be serviced and used as collateral. So for sure, I'm talking about all the assets that we have seen being launched in Solana over the last 12 months, like yield-bearing stables, like liquid staking tokens, like liquid restaking tokens, like principal traded assets, and of course, something that kind of has been brewing in the DeFi ecosystem ever since I started working in blockchain in 2016. Everyone's been talking about it, real-world assets. So all these assets basically create this very complicated and diverse universe, and they no longer fit the established paradigm of DeFi lending. So when building Texture, we essentially are not calling it just a new lending protocol in Solana. We are calling it a modular, isolated, and abstract lending protocol. And I mean, for many of you, it may sound like gibberish, just some random words. So I'll try to explain what we mean by modular. So we are no longer in the environment when a one unified lending asset pool can service the need of all the borrowers that hold like various kind of long tail assets and all the assets that I have listed just now. The architecture of the legacy protocols like Aave and Compound and the protocols that were inspired by these kind of is not flexible enough. What it essentially means is that whenever you try to add the new asset to the main pool, it potentially puts risks on the liquidity providers. It could potentially trigger the cascade liquidations for the entire pool. Hence, we only see kind of the top 5, top 10 most liquid, biggest, most trusted assets in lending. However, the universe of assets is much bigger, and there was another kind of evolution of lending protocols, and the protocol like Rarefuse solved for lending isolation. They created hundreds of isolated lending markets. However, what they didn't solve for was liquidity fragmentation. It was a very messy UX where you had to be depositing funds and collateral into hundreds and hundreds of isolated pools to be able to borrow against your collateral. Liquidity providers also had to supply their liquidity to hundreds and hundreds of different asset pools, and essentially no one kind of knew where the liquidity was, where the yield was being generated, and so on and so forth. So the next logical step in the evolution of lending protocols, of course, is the abstraction, which is, segregation of the borrowing side and of the liquidity side. And here comes, the new primitive, which is lending vaults. And I'm going to talk about lending vaults in more detail. Probably now it makes sense to focus on the borrowing side and the isolated pools. What actually means? What I actually mean when I talk about isolation? It means that everything is super granular, everything is super modular. Every isolated lending market has two assets. The creator of that isolated market or pool can set a whole range of parameters. Everything is custom, so they can range and they can set the range for LTVs, utilization, interest rate curves, oracles, and everything can be kind of played with. Everything can be changed after the pool is created, and so on and so forth. So this allows for flexibility. This allows to unlock the trapped collateral capital by the borrowers and essentially make lending less risky for the lenders, of course. So how the other side of the equation is being dealt with? Through the lending vaults. So all LPs deposit their liquidity into single currency lending vaults. And those vaults are managed by professional third-party asset managers, how we call them curators. So those curators are setting up the vaults. They're setting up the vault parameters. By parameters, I mean the rules of by which the vaults will be governed, but the rules by which basically the vaults will know how to distribute the liquidity across those multiple pools. So as probably you have heard, liquidity sometimes follows the yield. So for sure, vaults will automatically know which market generates the most yield. And if that yield source matches the risk parameters of the vault and set by the curator, according, of course, to the preferences of the LPs who deposit their funds in the vault automatically distributes the liquidity into that specific market. So it's kind of a very simple on the surface idea, but it's unlocks a huge deal of new lending primitives, and it's not that trivial to build. So why lending vaults are important, and why isolating them from the borrowing side is important? Because you can also build a ton of new lending primitives using the vaults. The probably most important and most exciting primitive that we're working on right now that will go to mainnet in a couple of months will be the integration between the lending vaults and the texture IMM. Essentially, you've probably heard about a protocol named Fluid, which is right now, just killing it and crushing it and gaining market share from Uniswap on EVM. So they did something similar. Of course, it's not as kind of easy to just replicate what these guys did. So we are redesigning this thing and tailoring this approach to the Solana specific environment and UX. But essentially, what we're gonna do is we're gonna unlock the chance for idle liquidity trapped in the lending vaults to be used for earning additional yield thanks to swapping. But besides IMM, of course, there are other primitives that we can build on top of the vaults, something that our team is working on. Structured products. When you have the yield available from the vault, you can do all sorts of stuff with it. You can break it down into tranches. You can create floating or variable and fixed yield. You can make those tranches subordinated. You can basically slice it up even further to cater for a more diverse set of liquidity providers. There is also this thing as over-collateralized borrowing vaults, which essentially means that if you deposit your collateral in some of the markets directly, but you don't want to use this collateral to the full extent, however, you are willing to take some marginal risk and earn some additional yield, you can rent this collateral out to other borrowers who will be able to get a loan with a higher LTV, right? So it's essentially a redistribution of risk from the vault lenders towards someone who deposited their collateral in the market directly. So probably before I talk about our team and why we're building what we're building, I want to just reiterate that we believe that creating this modular lending protocol with vaults, isolated lending markets, and IMM integration is just not the, it kind of is a logical next step in the evolution of the money markets in Solana. If we do want to see the Solana DeFi evolving with tons and hundreds of new assets being added, they have to have the lending liquidity behind them. It cannot only happen in the IMM. And for that feature to work well, it has to go through the isolated lending protocol models. So our mission is to provide the equal and transparent access to capital, of course, and yield distribution, because as probably some of you know, or all of you know, the disparity between rich and poor in this world essentially is because by a lot of reasons, because of the gap in access to capital, to leverage. So this is what we're trying to change. We're trying to breach that gap. We're trying to make the access to capital, leverage, and yield equally accessible to every participant via DeFi. And we believe that Solana is the perfect ecosystem to do that. Of course, thanks to the speed, throughput, and the developer activity. So a little bit about our team. Some of you guys have probably already used Texture Protocol. We've been running the peer-to-peer lending for the last 12 months. This is a pretty exciting product, which is a fixed term, fixed yield lending where borrowers borrow against their collateral directly from lenders, and there's no liquidation there. It's only 7 days, so the lender assumes 100% of the collateral risk. And it's been going pretty well. We have a couple of hundreds of dedicated users who use it on a weekly basis, and 30,000 loans overall. But what we've learned while operating, running, and building this product is that fixed yield, fixed term, and peer-to-peer lending is not yet needed that much in the Solana ecosystem. It's still very awkward in terms of the product UX. Borrowers still want to extend their loans, and if their collateral price goes down, the LTVs dramatically fall. Lenders, in return, don't want borrowers to return funds earlier. They want to carry on earning their yield. So the pool system is the way to go, and we've basically taken everything that we've learned through operating this protocol over the last 12 months, and we've integrated it into the design and development and audit and beta testing of the protocol, Texture 2.0, the modular lending protocol. And yeah, we're very excited to announce that we're going into public beta on the 5th of May, so in 1 week roughly. And there's going to be a lot of new markets and pools with a lot of assets that you have not previously seen on Solana DeFi lending. And of course, there's going to be vaults and all sorts of exciting things. Yeah, I've of course, encourage you to reach out. This is our Twitter. I also seem to have some more time, so I wanted to show you the beta, just for you to kind of see how it looks like. This is, not exactly the UI or the market's composition that's going to be live on mainnet in a week, but it kind of gives you a very broad idea of what we are working on. So I'm now in the Borrow tab, which essentially, means pools, markets. So again, even though they have more than 2 lines, more than 2 assets, all these pools are isolated. All the risks, interest rate curves, utilizations, LTVs across these pools are isolated. So none of the liquidations or none of the utilization parameters or interest rate curves, basically none of these trigger the change of the respective parameters in other pools. The next tab is Earn, which is Vaults, which is where you can deposit your liquidity. So for now, as a simplistic example, we have Texture Opportunistic USDC and Texture Conservative USDC. Of course, at launch, we're gonna have external curators curating some of the vaults, but I can, illustrate how you basically supply your liquidity. Let's say I want to go to Texture Conservative Vault. You don't see the yields here because it's a closed beta run by a couple of hundreds of beta testers. Not a lot of borrowing demand there. But if I want to supply, let's say, 300 USDC, internet is pretty slow. It's a hotel internet, so I hope that it goes through. So what I'm doing here, I'm depositing USDC in the vault. And I only, as an LP, I only have to do it once. So once I do it, I go to my positions, and here you go, basically. This vault, the Texture Conservative USDC, is now automatically managing my position. So I don't need to do anything, pretty much. I'm a passive LP who is just kind of enjoying my yield growth, hopefully. And I can see all the parameters here. Again, it's a beta, so I can see all the parameters. I can see the markets that this vault is distributing my liquidity to. I can see the basically genesis and origin of the yield, and I can see the split of risks. I can see exactly the list of collateral assets that I have an exposure to as an LP, as a depositor in this vault. And later on at the main beta launch, I'm going to see the external curator that is writing basically the rules of distribution of my liquidity for this specific vault. Borrowing kind of works very similar to how everyone here is used to borrow funds. So I have already deposited some of the SOL collateral here. So if I want to borrow some USDC against it, I can just click on Borrow. Click Max. This is the maximum according to the set LTV of 65%. That's the maximum amount of USDC I can borrow, and I can click Borrow. Again, wait for the slow internet to execute the transaction, and this is how it's done. So check it out at the main beta launch on the 5th of May. We're really excited for this. We've been working pretty hard for the last 12 months, designing this thing, kind of inspired by the icebreakers on EVM who thought of this idea first. And yeah, it's passed 2 audits. It's passed the quite an extensive beta testing. We were kind of specifically excited to make sure that all the liquidations work properly, that all the vaults work properly. And together with the auditors, we, I think, have, done a great job. So that's pretty much it. And if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, then thank you very much for your time. So no questions, okay. It's even easier. Thank you very much.